Joe Bob Briggs still here, and all I have to say is, ah, isn't that sweet? Roy and Sarah are going to get married and live in the little pitiful desert town together for the rest of their lives. But I have to say, that final mosquito attack on Charles Napier was about the funniest thing I've ever seen. Whoa! It's a plastic thing stuck on his face. So much for the classic 90s horror flick, Skeeter. They had hopes of a Skeeter 2, but I don't think so. All right, next week on Monstervision, we've got It's Alive 3. You just can't beat an It's Alive movie for sheer entertainment value. My buddy Larry Cohen makes those things. Killer baby movies. Remember the poster for the first one? There's only one thing wrong with the Jarvis baby. It's alive. And then our second feature will be Look What Happened to Rosemary's Baby, the sequel to the 60s horror classic. So what can I say? Killer baby night on Monstervision. Right now, though, time for Joe Bob's last call, and we move from the desert of California to the highlands of Colorado, where there are still more dead cattle cluttering up the ranches. And this time it's Robert Urich and Jo Beth Williams who are falling in love while trying to figure out the source of the mysterious cattle mutilations. And when this came out, there was a lot of stuff in the news about mutilated cattle that would be found on the ranches out west, and they had all kinds of theories that it was aliens who wanted to study animal life, because they would find these dead cows with perfect surgical incisions and all their inner organs removed. So Alan Rudolph, the director, is kind of trying to put this across as a true story. You know, as Tracy Griffith said about the giant killer mosquitoes, it could happen. So, all right, I don't want to spoil it for you if you haven't seen it, so I'll just give you those drive-in totals and we'll be off and running. We have 3 dead bodies, 9 dead cows, 1 cattle stampede, laser cow zapping, 5 motor vehicle chases with 3 crashes, 1 barroom brawl, close-up bovine surgery, 1 satanic barn burning, minor aardvarking, 1 poison toothbrush, helicopter cow napping, 1 death plunge, dead cow dangling, kung fu, morphine foo. It's a little confusing, so I'm going to give it 2.5 stars. Check it out, and I'll be here all night long counting cows. You know how guys in the country will say that? What you been doing, Ben? Counting cows. Some of those little Texas towns, that's entertainment, counting cows. It's either that or watch the Texaco sign revolve.
Last Call, an endangered species on TNT.
Ooh, dead cows. You know, those cows are just dropping like flies, aren't they? You got to put a lot of eerie music behind it to make a dead cow scary, you know? Anyway, you might be surprised to know that this movie is the screen debut of Robert Urich. He had never been in a feature film before this movie. He's best known as the star of Vegas, of course, and about 19 jillion other TV shows. Spencer for Hire, which we like to run into the ground on TNT, 11 o'clock Monday through Friday, Spencer for Hire, over and over and over again. So Robert was real excited about this movie because it was his chance to move on to the big screen. And he was actually lots more famous than Jo Beth Williams when this came out, because when they made it, Poltergeist hadn't been released yet. It was another year before The Big Chill came out, so they were neither one real movie stars at the time of this movie. But anyway, the movie was a box office bomb, and so Robert pretty much went back to TV. But it wasn't his fault, because MGM changed management right before this came out, and they just kind of dumped it into the theaters, and nobody really knew what the thing was about, and it vanished real quick. The movie is okay. You know, it's not great. It's actually a love it or hate it movie. Conspiracy theorists, they love it. Others don't think there's that much to it. But Robert Urich's performance is just fine. I think he plays a pretty believable alcoholic single dad. And by the way, I want to congratulate Robert on his recent successful completion of chemotherapy. He went through chemo, he licked his cancer, he finished his last treatment in February, he's back working again. So congratulations, Robert, and back to the movie. What? That's it. You know, occasionally I can say a positive thing on the air, and there's nothing more to it. It's not like I just did the Jerry Lewis telethon or something, you know?
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call, an endangered species on TNT.
That whole sequence we just watched with the devil cult burning down the barn and everything, that was based on some news reports. There were some sheriffs out west who thought it was hippies doing all those cattle mutilations. But can you imagine taking a scalpel to a dead cow when you're stoned? I don't think so. All right, here's the background of this movie. In the 1970s, they say there were 10,000 mutilated cattle found in 27 western states. That's what one article says. I found this other article that says the number was more like 1,500, and it was only 22 states. But anyhow, I think somebody's exaggerating, because I'm from Texas, and I don't think there's any way 10,000 cattle disappear, and the Southwestern Cattle Raisers Association doesn't go plumb crazy and start putting armed posses out on the range. And some thought it was caused by UFOs, and some thought it was the government doing it. Of course, ranchers always think it's the government doing something, And I won't tell you what the third theory was, because it'd give away the end of the movie. But the whole thing was tied up with research into germ warfare. In March 1968, a bunch of nerve gas got released at the Army's Dugway Proving Grounds near Salt Lake City. It wafted over to the surrounding farms, killed 4,600 sheep. So that's why Nixon banned all the germ testing in 1969. Then all the germ warfare stockpiles were closed down in 1972, and the first cattle mutilations happened in northern Kansas in 1973. They continued until 1980, and then they just dropped out of sight when Reagan came into office. So anyhow, that's all I'm going to say about it for right now. But somebody's killing the cattle, and it ain't McDonald's, okay? Roll film. Ranchers don't really like McDonald's, though, because McDonald's buys those cows that are all hamburger. Rancher, he likes to fatten up that cow, get a lot of marbling going on in there, sell them for prime rib. McDonald's goes, well, we don't want all that stuff in the cow. Sell us a skinny cow. It tastes the same to us if the cow's skinny. And the ranchers hate that. They go, we've spent 150 years trying to make the cow taste better. McDonald's goes, that's very nice. We don't care.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call, an endangered species on TNT.
This movie has a lot of great actors in it. That's Hoyt Axton, of course, the legendary country western singer and songwriter, as the cattleman and big man around town. And Paul Dooley is the newspaper editor. He was one of the regulars in all the Robert Altman films, which makes sense because Alan Rudolph, the director of this movie, started out working as an assistant to Robert Altman. But Paul Dooley, he was a pretty big deal on Broadway, worked at Second City, and then in the next scene that we're going to watch, the doctor is played by Harry Carey Jr. He goes way back. He made all those John Ford westerns. In fact, all the acting in this thing is good. I don't know what bothers me about this movie. Yeah, I do. I do know what bothers me. It's that annoying, weird music. What is that stuff? Those electronic sounds all the time. It's giving me a headache. And a lot of the scenes are so dark. I'm thinking, now what is that? Is that a dead cow, or did he just show us a tattoo on his butt? Because I can't tell what's going on in the scene. So let's just go. Let's move it along. Something weird's going on out at the missile site. Robert Urich is drunk and horny. Okay? Does that about sum it up? Okay. Roll it. This may be the finest film ever made in Buffalo. Buffalo, Wyoming. Population 3,799. They still remember this film in Buffalo. They remember it, and TNT remembers it. And that's pretty much it.
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call, an endangered species on TNT.
So the guy who gets out of the helicopter there is Peter Coyote, another good actor who wasn't yet discovered when he made this movie, because Peter Coyote, he's a weird one. He was a dock worker in San Francisco. Then he got involved with this mime troupe during the 60s. Mime was really big in the 60s. And then he decided to quit acting when he was 23. And he roamed around the country in a mobile home, killing birds and selling their feathers to support himself. Then when he was almost 40 years old, he kind of drifted back into acting, and he made a couple movies, including this one. And then he got the role of Keys the scientist in E.T. and he's been an actor ever since then. And he does mean really good, as you'll see as we continue with Endangered Species. People are out there carving up cows, you know. No, officer, it's not what you think. I was carving up this cow for my own personal use. You know, seems like they would have caught at least one of these guys out there, you know. Yes, officer, all I wanted was the intestines. You know, the wife and kids at home, they just love that cow intestine goulash. I mean, what can you say if they catch you doing this?
Back to Joe Bob's Last Call, an endangered species on TNT.
Now, wait a minute. That was a helicopter with a silencer on it. How could a helicopter be so quiet that it sneaks up behind you and knocks you down? See, this right here is where the movie gets kind of flaky. Because, well, first of all, we had to cut out the hot aardvarking scene between Robert Urich and Jo Beth Williams. They take a great shower, and then they make the sign of the triple-humped manatee, but you can't show that on TNT. I think they have good chemistry in this, though, which is strange because when they first showed up in Wyoming to make this movie, Robert Urich was introduced to her, and he made a remark that she thought was sexist, and she dumped juice in his lap. So I guess they got over that. Anyhow, does anybody know what's going on here? Because, see, this is where I think they lost it in this movie. They have all those close-ups of the scientists saying words like hemotoxin and platelet discharge and corpuscles, and helicopters are swinging cows around like rides at the county fair, and everything's so dark and hard to see that, I don't know. All we know is there's some bad guys out at the missile silo doing disgusting things to cows. That's all I know, so roll it. Reminds me of some of my cousins down in Waco, you know, but we won't go into that. They're in counseling now. They're fine.
An endangered species on TNT.
Well, now it's getting kind of silly, don't you think? I mean, that was a great scene, though, where Hoyt Axton starts hemorrhaging blood and keels over dead, but kidnapping the little girl, I don't think so, because you're talking the Lindbergh Act at that point. Up till then, it's just a bunch of dead cows. Although, you know, this country, we do have a pretty outrageous record of doing illegal germ research. Remember that weird army doctor that infected all the Puerto Ricans with cancer back in the 30s? And then the doctors in Tuskegee, Alabama that gave, well, they didn't give syphilis to the black men, but they just didn't treat them for the syphilis that they had. And they took those 70 prisoners in a jail in Philadelphia. They got them to volunteer to have Agent Orange sprayed all over them. So we do get carried away when it comes to germ research, but, you know, just talking about germ research, it makes me feel a little puny. So that's what I don't like about disease movies, because all of a sudden my lip starts twitching and my stomach cramps up, and all I want to do is watch Jerry Lewis movies and stay home. All right, back to the film. It's okay, I'm fine, you know, but let me ask you this. 12 beers over a 4-hour period, would that do anything to you? Yeah, no, not you guys, right?
We now return to Joe Bob's Last Call on TNT.
God, that music is annoying. So, anyhow, the movie just kind of peters out at the end, you know? Who were those guys? They don't exactly tell you who they were, do they? They start out the movie saying, who's killing the cattle? Who's killing the cattle? And then at the end of the movie, you're going, so who's killing the gall-darn cattle? You know, I'm not surprised it didn't become the blockbuster hit they were all hoping for. Anyway, once again, I want you to be here next Saturday because the movies are It's Alive 3 and Look What's Happened to Rosemary's Baby. It's Killer Baby Night on Monstervision. And that'll just about do it for this edition of Last Call, even though if you plan in advance, it's never last call. Why do you think they invented styrofoam ice coolers? And speaking of making happy hour go on just a little too long, did you guys see that case recently where a police officer was assigned to stake out the parking lot of this rowdy bar and watch for possible drunk drivers leaving the bar? So he's sitting there, and he sees this guy stumble out of the bar, trips on the curb, tries to open the doors of 6 different cars before he finally finds his own car. Then he collapses in the front seat of the car, and he doesn't move. And he stays there the whole evening. People keep coming out of the bar, starting up their cars, driving away. But this guy's still collapsed in his front seat. So finally, the parking lot's almost empty, and the guy finally sits up. He pulls himself into an upright position. He starts his car. He starts to pull out of the lot. So the cop immediately pounces on him. He pulls him out of the car. He gives him a breathalyzer test right away. The result of the breathalyzer, 0.0 blood alcohol content. And the cop says, how could that be? And the guy says, simple. Tonight, I'm the designated decoy. Joe Bob Briggs reminding you that the drive-in will never die. You guys appreciated that one. You understood that one, right? I took one of those alcohol blood tests one time. They found an olive in it. I knew it was time to quit drinking when I saw the handwriting on the floor. What am I doing here? I'm doing old Joey Lewis material here. Somebody take me drunk, I'm home.